Guys, so I wanted to film a video because I haven't really done one in a while, um, but I couldn't quite find a song that was really working for me or something that it just wasn't feeling right. So I figured I'd just talk today. And I didn't really have a plan in mind when I started this. I probably should have, but let's just talk about me. Let's talk about mental health because I'm very open with the fact that I deal with mental health problems. I deal with a lot of depression and a lot of anxiety and a lot of mood swings. I'm not bipolar, that's a whole other thing. But my journey to my diagnosis, which is borderline personality disorder, it's really interesting if you want to look it up. Maybe I'll do another video about all the fun facts of borderline. But my journey to this was quite a long road, and I'm nowhere near done, but it was quite a long road to get to where I am today. I always say that I was kind of this miracle child because I was like this gift from God as this third try after 2 miscarriages. So I don't know if that put any pressure on me, but for all I know it did. I grew up as the gifted kid. I was taking all these advanced classes and I was taught to be in the top percent of my class, and if I wasn't there, then there was something wrong because I had the ability. So if I wasn't scoring where I should be, well then what the hell was up? And so I kind of just dealt with all this pressure from school, and then we kept moving around, so I had to make new friends fast, and I had to learn to adapt to my situation, which was a good thing, I thought. I thought it was good that I was so able to change kind of who I was to fit the situation and to fit in with all these people around me. And so I thought I was doing good by adapting myself so much. It got to the point where I was becoming separate people, which maybe isn't the right wording for it, but that's my wording. If you have another wording for it, great. Maybe educate me so I'm not offending whoever. But I was becoming these separate people, and I never learned to stop. Then in 2012, I found out that my dad resigned his call in Texas. And so we weren't having that income. And so my dad was he was focusing on himself. Obviously, it was a good thing, he needed to. But he was focusing on providing for our family and finding a new job so that we wouldn't have to struggle, which oftentimes meant that he didn't necessarily, or the way that I perceived it, is that he didn't necessarily always have time for me. And my mom, she wasn't always working 2 jobs, but that's most of what I remember is her working 2 jobs when I didn't get to see her all that much because she left in the morning for her first job before I got up from school, and I rode the bus home because my dad wasn't able to pick me up. So I had to ride the bus home, and by the time I got home, Mom had already left, or maybe I got to see her just to say hi before she had to leave out the door to go to her second job. So I really didn't sense this parent figure, really, because my dad, even though he was there, even when he was, it didn't really feel like he was there, and then Mom wasn't there. So I internalized that way too hard, and tried to step up and parent my sisters. Or maybe I just fell into this hole. I don't really know what happened, but yeah, it wasn't good, and so I stopped asking for help when I needed it. I stopped talking to my parents. I stopped talking to a lot of people, and I kind of shut myself off. my internal self, who I still knew to be me, I kind of shut her off from everyone and just put out this image of what was happening and how I was so good at coping with it, and I was coming out stronger, and really I was beating myself down because I wasn't letting myself ask for help. I wasn't letting myself show when I was upset. I wasn't letting myself actually feel the extent of my emotions around people. I would only feel those emotions internally, and then I would just take them out on myself later. And I didn't realize what I was doing until it got to a point in high school when we had moved to Wisconsin, and I had went through 7th, 8th, 9th, and then the start of my sophomore year. I was just so stressed and so overwhelmed and so angry that everyone around me was seeming to be normal, and they were having normal lives, and they were living just their best selves, and I was over here struggling, and I couldn't comprehend why that was fair, that why I had forced myself to make all these changes to myself to fit in, and they were all doing fine. So I ran away from home. Fortunately, luckily, I was found about 2 hours later after I left. I wasn't very smart in the planning, thank God. But that's when I was first put into therapy. And the thing with therapy that I always tell people, I always recommend therapy to everyone, whether you deal with mental illness or not, because it is so helpful to have a professional in your corner that is there to help you work through whatever you need to work through. And so it was just really nice to have that. But you have to find the right person, and this first therapist that I went to wasn't the right person. She diagnosed me with a stress disorder. It was adjustment disorder, which is just, I don't deal with stress well, which I don't know a single person that does deal with stress well, but that's another, if you do, props. But just, I would find ways to evade talking to this therapist. I would just tell her that I was tired, and she wouldn't make me talk about what was going on and what I was dealing with. And this went on for about a year. After this, I kind of started going deeper and deeper into this depression, and I got quite suicidal. I didn't have plans, but I was so sick and tired of everything, and I didn't want to keep going. I just wanted to be done. I wanted a break, really, from being myself and life and everything, but I couldn't see another way out. So right before we switched therapists, right before my parents decided to switch therapists for me, I finally opened up a little bit, and just enough to where she was like, oh shit, like, this is some serious stuff. And so she switched my diagnosis to severe depression with some anxiety in there. And then I switched therapists, and this therapist, who I'm still kind of with, I'll get to that in a second, but he was quite aggressive. I often joked with my friends about some of the things he would say, and they're like, are you good? I was like, no, this is what I need, because he would call out my bull. He would be like, you are faking it so much right now, and you need to stop. So, yeah, he would get me to talk. He said, you're in here to fix what's wrong. You're in here to get help. You're going to get help, and the only way that you're going to do that is by talking. And I was like, well, I mean, you're not wrong. But I still wasn't getting better. And it got to the point where I overdosed on my medication and went into psychiatric care. The meds that I overdosed on thankfully didn't do anything to my system, so I was fine. But it was the fact that I was done. I was trying to end it all, and that wasn't okay. And so I went into the hospital for the first time, and over time, I went out and I thought I was better, but then I would get into this repeat cycle where I felt so cleansed coming out of the hospital, and I wanted that feeling again. So I would pull the suicidal card and I'd go back into the hospital, and I'd come out feeling so cleansed and happy and healthy, or so I thought, and I would repeat this until eventually people started to notice, and, well, people being my therapist, and he was like, you're using this as your safe place. You need to find another place that's your safe place, because you are going to run yourself into the ground trying to go in and out of the hospital, and it's not going to be good for you. I tried to fix it, but I couldn't, and I tried to fix it, and I just kept repeating this cycle until my last time in the hospital, and I can't do this anymore. That I was in the hospital so much, and I realized that something needed to change, and so I started digging into all of this hidden stuff that was going on in my head in therapy, and we started working through it, and I thought we were doing good. Like, depression, anxiety, they're gonna have bad days, but I thought I was doing good until a couple months ago when I noticed on my med sheet, because when you go out of the doctor, when you finish the doctor, they give you like the sheet. They're like, oh, your meds changed, and here's what you talked about. And it said that they talked about bipolar. And I knew that I had mentioned that I was having a lot of mood swings and that I was very unstable. I didn't have a lot of mood stability, but I was like, I didn't think that I was bipolar. And I looked into it, and what happens with me is that when I look something up on the internet, I tend to believe that I have it, because I match myself to the vague symptoms that they put on there. And I talked to my therapist, and I was like, what is my official diagnosis? Am I bipolar? And he goes, no, you are not bipolar. And he explained that I have borderline personality disorder, which is really interesting, and I don't remember a lot of the specifics. But with my borderline, it deals a lot with the relationships that I have with people, and how I'm really anxious about having certain levels of vulnerability with people. And so I kind of internalized that and took that in and said, okay, so and I talked to my med doctor, and she was like, you have borderline personality. So they both agreed that I had borderline personality. And she said that one of the reasons that she has bipolar on my list of diagnoses, my borderline is primary, but bipolar is listed on there. And that is just to explain the meds that I am on, because I'm on meds that the combination that I'm taking only makes sense for a bipolar diagnosis. So in order for the insurance companies to validate it, she has to put bipolar on my list of diagnoses, or just list of like why she's treating me, so that the insurance company will just be like, yep, okay. And that kind of brings us up to today. That's kind of been my journey through diagnoses, but that's not necessarily my story. Performing circus monkey is a term that would most fit kind of the way I think and act. I used to just do everything for everyone and just do what I thought other people would want me to do, regardless of how I felt. So I would make sure that I was getting top grades and taking all these advanced classes because I thought that people would validate me if I was achieving so much. And that's a very toxic way to think. It's so not healthy for me to think that way. And slowly I fixed it. Now it's the ever-present who am I and what do I really want. Now whenever an activity for someone that would take a little bit of deciding now takes me probably like a mountain of effort to decide if I'm gonna do it, because just I don't know if I'm doing it for myself or if I'm doing it because it's what I think other people would want of me. And oftentimes these people that I'm talking about are just imaginary figments that I've made up in my mind that are constantly weighing me down. So it's definitely a big struggle. Another story I'll probably make sometime is my college story, because that definitely played a huge part in me kind of waking up and realizing that I need to start taking care of myself. It's definitely been a long road, but you know what? We're surviving, and now we're in quarantine, which is not helping anything, but I'm working on keeping moving and staying active. I'm failing most of the time, but you know what? At this point, it's the thought that counts. I dyed my hair purple. That was a fun change. But yeah, I know I kind of bounced around a lot. It's just something that I felt like people might want to know. And because a lot of the times I've spoken with different groups about my journey and all the stuff I've gone through. So, I don't know. This might be fun. Maybe I can talk more with you guys. But if there's anything else you guys want to know, I'll probably link this to Facebook. So just, I don't know, ask me questions there or ask questions down in the comments and I'll answer them. I'm a pretty open book about it now. So yeah. Thanks guys. Bye.